Welcome. My name is Danny Mydlack, and I'm your instructor here for this EMF 221 Principles of Film and Media Production. First off, I want to make sure that you get our book. This is our book here, Making Media: Foundations of Sound and Image Production, Jan Roberts Breslin. There should be books available. Pick this up if you haven't already. Pick it up immediately, because we're going to be doing this course through this book. I'm going to be giving these online video lectures to accompany the reading and also to be explaining the project so that you understand where we're at. So I'm starting with Chapter 1, and I want to go over some of the important issues in Chapter 1. One thing to note is that the exams that you'll be taking are going to be, and the reading and these lectures are semi-synchronous. That means the day that I put up the lecture is the day that I'm expecting you to view the lecture in its entirety. The time period for the reading is the time period that I expect you to do the reading. And then the day that I put up the quiz or exams is when I expect to see those. And you'll see this reinforced in some email and some other announcements that I'll give to you. That way we're always going to stay synchronous, loosely synchronous throughout this time period. It's important for, as well as the assignments. The assignments are going to be due. They're going to have hard deadlines. It's important to stay synchronous together in this so that nobody falls behind. So we're on the first chapter in the book, and this first chapter focuses on pre-production, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but it focuses on content. One thing you should know is that with EMF, with our department, we have consciously chosen to be focused on content. That doesn't mean that we're not also focused on production technique. We're very serious about this, and we're very capable at training people in that, and you will be. But we want to make sure to get the cart before the horse, and that content drives your production. So we're not simply a vocational training for video assistants and so on, but we're actually interested in a rigorous, comprehensive training for the media creator. When we talk about content, which seems a very formal term, what we're really very simply talking about are just a few things. They all boil down to kind of one thing, but we can give them different names. We're talking about what you as the creator want to say, or another way of doing that is what you want to show or to reveal, or what you want to change in the world, the kind of change you want to see affected, or something that you feel or want to feel and you want to share with other people. That's what we mean by content. It's a very fundamental, basic human experience. A term that you're going to hear us use often throughout your time in the department, and certainly on this in this course, is referring to the story. And we are definitely using sort of air quotes here at times, meaning we use the term story specifically and we use it very generally. Now I want to talk about the general use of this idea of the story. The story we see can be applied to lots of things. So there is not just the story of the fiction film or the story occurring within a particular scene between two people or a drama. We're also talking about, we can talk about what's the story of a piece of information or the story that we're trying to convey conceptually. Even stories that take place within 30 seconds, 15 seconds. So we're talking about how we grab people, how we pull them in, how we hold them, and then how we let them go. So there's the arc of the story, and there's more to it than that. In this course, we're going to explore specifically what are the guts of story that can be applied to any kind of product. Any kind of media creation. What is the guts of what attracts people, holds them, and then leaves them? And what you're going to hear and what you're going to experience is that it's more than simply beginning, middle, and end. but it has something to do with how something is created within that beginning, middle, of an end. And I'll be a lot less mysterious about this, and we'll talk directly, and you're going to have an experience to really use this directly. And this is applicable to any number of different kinds of formats. That's what your internal process is, the creative process that we're talking about, and when we talk about creating content. What also influences how we create content is knowing what audiences want, or knowing what your specific audience wants. So knowing what audiences want is a basic understanding of how people's attention works in audio and visual media, how people's attention works over time, and how people's emotions and cognitive constructions are guided. And there's a lot of good general knowledge that is very useful right at the beginning on how to do that stuff. Your role could be any of a number of roles. Now I'm not just talking about job description, whether or not you're a photographer, a director of photography, or you're a director, or you're a cable puller, or you're a recorder, or whatever, or an announcer. I mean, you're also your role as a content creator. So there's a variety of roles, right? Some of them might be, for example, you might be a media artist, in which case your primary activity is self-expression. Or you might be a media activist, and so your primary activity is to create change or action in the world. Or you might be an advertiser, in which case you're trying to make people buy something or make people adopt an idea. Or you might be an advocate, in which case you're trying to change people's opinions. That covers a lot of territory there. And so those are widely varied roles. But the idea of story and the principles of how audiences work and the basic production process and pre-production process has some deep similarities, and that's what we cover. There is there are a lot of choices for how you create and how you release and present media nowadays. There's a wide variety of outlets and a wide variety of production techniques and approaches and so on. It's important for you to begin to separate out the terminology for this. So when we talk about types of programming, for example, we're talking about the forms and formats that people understand generally, usually, for media products. So a sitcom is a type of programming. A news hour is a type of programming. A feature documentary is a type of programming. Okay, so that's types of programming. There's also methods of production. And methods of production, as you can imagine, there are big budget, multi-camera studio shoots. There are single person, cheap camera, low definition video run and guns. There are live audio concerts. These are methods of production. And third, there are means of distribution. So means of distribution, one could release or present their videos or products in a YouTube video, or it could be a live radio simulcast, or and so on and so forth. It could be a big budget television primetime network production. Now, what you can probably see and imagine is that these three different things, types of programming, methods of production, means of distribution, are not so simple, because you don't simply match a certain kind of production with a certain kind of programming, a certain kind of distribution. Things are not that conventional anymore. They are in some ways, but there's a lot of overlap. One can produce low budget, cheap video camera, single person shooter video, and it shows up in a big budget television reality TV programming. So you can imagine there's a lot of mixing and matching of these three categories. Also, basic sort of terminology is to understand three big sort of general groupings, whether something is fiction, and fiction refers to stuff that's made up usually by a writer, a script writer, or a group of script writers. There's nonfiction, which denotes that the material is acquired from reality, so it's reality driven and reality based. And then there's non-narrative, and non-narrative is a kind of catch-all term for those things that are not story-like, and I'm using the little word story rather than big story, but they're not story-like in nature or not linear so necessarily. So they may be a musical production, or it may be a sportscast or whatever. This chapter focuses on pre-production. Now, this is a very conventional approach and understanding of the production process. And even this has some increasing variation nowadays because things start to spill over into each other. But it's good to understand the clear sort of steps here. So pre-production obviously happens before production, and that happens before post-production. Pre-production focuses on, as you can imagine, the proposal or the treatment or the script and those kinds of things, the preparation for production. And production usually means when you grab a camera, you grab a recording device, you grab the means of creating images and stuff, and you go to town with those. Pre-production can involve the treatment. That's something we're going to explore. It involves getting clearance for the rights to use certain materials, copyright. It involves figuring out the money, if there's money involved. It involves things like insurance, something as specific as that. Pre-production is primarily done by the people who are in the creative management. So those are the producers and the directors. And we call all of those people above the line personnel. So those are executive producers, all the varieties of producers, executive producers, co-producers, assistant producers, and the directors. They're involved in the creative decisions generally. Below the line are all of the production personnel. So those involve people like line producers, director of photography, technical crew, all of the different people that make up all the services for actually getting shoots done. When we talk about pre-production, we're focusing on some important documents that are living documents in the sense that they are changeable, mutable, that they're really things that people sweat, sometimes years and years over. And there are various kinds of documents, and that's what this chapter explores in brief. There are scripts, screenplays, storyboards, flowcharts, and there is no one exact correct document, except when you're getting into larger budgets where it becomes important to standardize. So standardized script formats or standardized storyboards and so on. Important to know that it's not trivial, these issues about copyright. We're going to talk a little bit about that in production. Just to note that in your time here, you will even see issues will come up over using appropriated material by other artists, things that have been already copyrighted. And we'll give you some guidance, try and give you some guidance about how to do that. So this is chapter 1. This covers that first reading. Do the reading. Look at it in detail. Really understand what you're reading. Thanks for tuning in.